This tutorial will cover basic Sibelius skills that are used when arranging. So I'm focusing on a task that I've set for Year 11 students where they're arranging Octopus Garden using a melodic instrument, piano, drums and bass. You can see here I've got my task on the left side of my screen and I'm going to open up Sibelius and put it on the right side of my screen. This is just handy to be able to refer back to the original while I'm doing my arrangement. The lovely Sibelius startup music. Okay, so basically the first thing I do is go to change instruments and I will add to score my chosen instruments. So we need piano and a woodwind instrument. I start off just with these two because it's a much simpler way of getting started rather than having a cluttered screen of 4 to 5 staves. We're just focusing on the two instruments. So our time signature is 4/4, and one thing to note is that we've got an anacrusis starting off, as you can see, selected. So that means we need to add start bar with a length of 3 crotchets. And the key is C major, so that's fine. We'll just add a title, and in the composer you can put R star key arranged by whoever. Okay, so this is the generic startup screen for Sibelius. We've got our 2 instruments that we're just focusing on for now. We can add other instruments in later. The keypad is a very important tool. I'll show you how to get that up in case it's not up. Basically the keypad is what you'll be using to input notes, rests, etc. Okay, so we start off selecting a crotchet, a quarter note as Americans like to say, and you just simply click where you want to input the note. Now instead of doing this every time, using the button R when you've got a note selected just repeats what you've done. So I just use R and I keep doing that, and it's a much faster way of inputting. And you can just go back and select notes like I just did the crotchet and I change it to a rest. Okay, so moving on, I've created extra bars. Now when I need extra bars, or when you press R, it will just create another bar by default. So that's how I generally continue writing music. The other way to do this is just to go insert bar, but I'll show you that just a bit later on. Okay, and you can see there's repeated sections in the music, as I'll highlight now. So that section repeats, it's just a slightly different interval. So I change the interval and I can repeat that whole section by just selecting the 2 bars and pressing R for repeat. Okay, so here's nearly the melody finished, but we've got to remember we've got an anacrusis, which means our last bar needs to be a crotchet. So we're going to create a bar and a regular bar, and it's just going to be for 1 beat, and that's going to go at the end. So I've inserted that, and now I can finish making my melody. The next thing we're going to do is put in the chord symbols. So I can put the chord symbols above my piano stave so I know what chords I'm going to be writing in the piano part. So to do this, you select the bar you're starting with and press Ctrl K or Command K if you're using a Mac, and it'll come up with a cursor and you just input the chord. To jump from bar to bar like I'm doing, you press the tab button and it'll go to the start of the next bar. Otherwise you can use the spacebar key to toggle between beats. Okay, so once I've got my chord symbols in, I will start inputting just general triads of the chords. So I'll start off with just semibreves. And what I'm doing here is just selecting the bar and pressing delete, and it'll create just a whole bar rest, which looks better than 3 crotchet rests. Okay, so we're going to have input our semi-breve triads, and I'm just going to make them root note triads. As you can see, we've got to add in our 7th notes. Okay, so while they're in root position, you select all of your chords, and this is a very fast way of making your bass line, or your piano bass. So you go Edit, Filter, select chords in for copying and the bottom note, and you Control Copy or Edit Copy and paste it in the bass line. And you've just got to remember they're going to probably be an octave too high, so if you select all your bass notes and press Control down, Command down on a Mac, it will take them down an octave. Okay, so that's the simplest way and the fastest way of putting your bass notes in. So as we could hear, that was quite slow and taking a while to get through those first 4 bars. So what I do is I go and click on the transport, and I can go to this metronome marker and speed it up to 140 or 160, whatever I fancy, really. Okay, so when we start smooth voicing, you can see that bottom C is in a nice position, but that A, we've got a common note in the A minor 7, which is the C, so we're going to put that A up the top, so the C stays on the bottom. And you continue on with this with the F. Basically, I'm just pressing Control up to put the note up the octave. So I've been able to keep all those C's in common. We've moved to the D minor 7. Got a D in common there, so I've put 2 notes up the octave, the G and the B, and we just keep going along like that. So once we've done our melody and piano line, it's time to add in drums and bass to complete this small arrangement. So what we do is we go to Create, Instrument, alternatively you can just press I, and go to the rhythm section and create a bass guitar and a drum set, and click OK. Okay, so now we've got a bit of options to choose a style that we can arrange in. So I'm going to just consult this jazz style sheet, and we'll use variation 1. So the first thing we're going to do is put in swing, because the feel is swing. So you go just right click the page, click text, go to tempo text and type in swing. This will play back the arrangement with a swung feel. Okay, now starting our bass line. Basically you can see in the styles guide that we've got 1, 3, 5, 3, and that repeats throughout. So it's a 1 bar repeated phrase that we can just repeat throughout with the chord changes. So again, I'm just pressing R, changing the pattern according to the chord. Okay, so now we've got our bass line, it's time to start the drum line. So I'm going to start just by putting in the ride part, which you can see is a crotchet and 2 quavers. Now the note head here is slightly different. It's a cross, and that's what drummers use to mark the cymbals. So what we do is we just select those notes and go to Properties. Now when you click on Properties, this window will come up and there's drop down menus. You just click on Notes and change it to the cross. And it now sounds like a cymbal. Now to create the snare part, what I just did then was I pressed Shift 4 and that creates an interval of a fourth underneath the note, and that's where the snare sits. In drum music, the snare is always in the C space on the treble clef. And of course the snare is just a normal note head, so I changed that back to a note head. Now our kick drum is in a different voice. As you could just see, I selected the second voice, which is green. Basically anything played on the drum kit with your foot is in the green voice, and anything played by the hands with sticks is in the blue voice. And I've just pressed Control to click those two individual notes and create them as cross notes. And that is when the hi-hat is played with the pedal. Okay, so once we've done all of that, I'm just going to put in a metronome mark to make the song always play at a specific metronome counting. So what we need to do is just right click that text cursor and you can select a crotchet and then put a space, equals, put a space, whatever tempo you'd like, and I've put in 148. It was just a bit crowded on the screen, so I'm moving it around. So now every time I play the piece, it'll play at 148. Just tidy that up. Okay, so now we've got our bass and drums done. The piano line also has a different rhythmic pattern. So what I'm doing is just simply altering the rhythm, copying, pasting where I can to make it faster. And I then just do this with the rest of the chords. Okay, so now we've added everything in. Just play it back. Just change the zoom so I can see the full score. And so this is the final arrangement. Lovely. So I think to finish it off we'll just add in a crash cymbal at the end to play that semi-brief held note. This is a nice little finisher. So to do that, the crash I've put on the A line to play back, and here it is. Lovely. Well, hopefully that tutorial provided some insight into doing a simple arrangement like this. So the task I set actually also asks students to reharmonise the original. So we see these chords aren't all that interesting. The chord progression's pretty basic, so to adapt this further I would get my students to then put in new chords and have a go at reharmonising this piece. Thank you for watching.